Good evening, everyone. My name is Mary Kelly, and I'm a member of the Dubuque League of Women Voters. The League is a nonpartisan political organization which encourages informed and active citizen participation in government. Membership is open to any citizen 18 years of age or older. We'd like to thank the Dubuque Community School Board candidates for their participation this evening and for their invaluable gift to Dubuque by being candidates for public office. The 7 candidates running for 3 four-year positions on the school board are Nancy Bradley, Katie Jones, Cynthia Mueller, Anderson Sainci, Whitney Sanger, Dereka Williams-Robinson. Jim Prochaska is filling a 2-year term. Jake Eider is not participating in tonight's forum. Ms. Bradley, we will begin with you. What skills and experiences qualify you to be a school board member?
Thank you. First of all, thank you, Mary, and to the other members of the League of Women Voters for the opportunity to be here tonight. Just a little bit about myself. I've had the privilege of serving the children, families, staff members, and community of Dubuque as an educator for a long time. And 47 of those years were as a member of the employment of the Dubuque Community School District, and the past 4 years have been as a member of the Board of Education. In addition, I serve on the Keystone Area Education Agency Board of Education, which gives me a broad view of educational issues throughout the area of Northeast Iowa, which is the area served by Keystone. I really believe that excellence in education is the key to students' success in their world that they'll enter as they leave us as students. Candidates have a variety of different values, a variety of different priorities about education. My continued focus will be on each pre-kindergarten through 12th grade student in the Dubuque Community School District and about their need and their right to be educationally well prepared for life and for a future as a contributing citizen in their community and in our society. We must prepare them to be lifelong learners. Our responsibility is to provide them with the highest quality of education possible. As an educator, I was a teacher, a reading clinician, an elementary principal, and thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bradley.
You bet.
Ms. Jones.
Yes, thank you for having me here tonight to participate. My name's Katie Jones. What qualifies me to be a school board member is, I guess as a nurse, I've been trained in critical thinking and problem solving, assessing needs, and providing interventions in acute situations. I have the ability to look at the whole picture and not just single issues that we're facing. As a mom, I've become very good at negotiating differences and finding common ground. And through my time on the Board of Health, I've learned really how boards operate, how they run. I've gathered an overwhelming amount of knowledge through this past year on the Board of Health and formed strong relationships with other leaders in our community and other resources. This knowledge of public health will really allow me to serve as the bridge on this board and for our district and just public health and overall wellness. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mueller.
Once again, thank you for having us here this evening so that we can express our views. I am a native Dubuquer. I attended Fulton and Jefferson and senior high schools. I taught for 38 years instrumental music in the Dubuque Public Schools, and I was a band director at Jefferson for 24 years. So as a result, I have met many parents and students and been involved in organizing many things for the band and getting their facilities up to date. And so I feel that I bring these qualities to the school board. My goals in running for the school board are to support some of the new educational programs that are there, like the Core Plus teachers at the elementary level who are helping students to gains back some of the skills and concepts that they may have lost last year, and also to support the education pathways program at the high school level, the Vertex, so that they will help students transition into the local workforce through concurrent community classes with college and high school credit, and also with jobs that provide job shadowing and apprenticeships and internships. I want to do something about the aging buildings in our school district. I want to have an equitable plan, including air conditioning for everyone, so that we have equitable facilities in all areas of the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Prochaska?
Yes, thanks for having us all here tonight. I'm glad to see there's a good turnout. I wish to continue as an incumbent on the board. I've been on the board for 8 years, and I'm running for the 2-year term. Basically, I want to give back to the schools. I was a retired educator. I was a science teacher at senior high school for 39 plus years. And I want to give back to the community. When I first ran for the board, I didn't really have any agenda or any axe to grind or anything like that, and I still do not. I, like all board members, take our responsibility very seriously, and I'm happy to see that we have a reasonable turnout of candidates this time, which is great. I feel like I've been a good representative of the community, and like the rest of our board colleagues, we are in attendance frequently. We attend committee meetings, and then we have our monthly board meetings. And we basically do our business at the committee meetings. And this is where I often bring up, often I'm kind of known for asking a lot of questions at our committee meetings, and I hope to continue doing that in the next 2 years. So our school district has been fiscally sound under our tenure, and I hope that we continue to be responsible to our community in the next few years. Thank you.
Mr. Sainci?
Well, I echo what everyone else is saying. I want to thank you ladies for putting this together, and also to all the viewers that are watching today. Specific skill sets that I bring to the table. First of all, I'm a servant leader. Since being elected to the school board, I've been in every single building prior to COVID, not once, but multiple times serving, taking the trash out, serving students, serving teachers, taking students on their first college visits. Number 2, I know how to partner and bring people to the table to address complex issues. If it's brain health, hunger, equity, poverty, you name it, I've done it with the community in partnership. I know how to use data to make informed decision and disaggregating that data to make sure we're looking at things from an equity lens, and that has been in partnership with all of the board members that have been on the board. And I know how to put a strategic plan together. That's one of the most important things that we do as a board, is make sure we have a plan that's going to drive us forward. And so that is with input from parents, teachers, and the community. And so those are specific skill sets that I brought to the table. And not just on a local level, I do bring this voice on a state level where I know how to advocate for our schools. I know how to talk about issues that are impacting, if it's the pandemic or racial injustice. I know how to bring those voices to the board level and to the state level. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sanger?
First off, I want to give a sincere thanks to the League of Women Voters for providing a space and platform to share our visions for the Dubuque Community School District. So thank you very much. My name is Whitney Sanger. I'm a mother of 5, nonprofit leader, and community advocate and servant. I am here today because I want to be a strong voice for our children and to build a district that is future-focused, vibrant, and inclusive to all. My grandfather, Eldon Herrig, past school board member, once told me, "What you do for yourself dies with you, but what you do for others lives on for eternity." I will always lead with this message in mind. I will lead with kindness, empathy, and a drive to create a future we all can be proud of. I believe my expertise, involvement in nonprofits, passion, and love for this community will be a contribution to the collaborative efforts of the school board and the entire district. If elected, I believe I can be a voice of areas of health and wellness, brain health, initiatives, teacher support and empowerment, financial solvency, and through a culture that is focused on inclusivity. If elected, I promise there will be no greater advocate for your children. Thank you. I look forward to sharing my visions.
Thank you. Ms. Williams-Robinson.
Thank you for having me today. I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak here. Why I'm here is because I am a person who has lived real experiences. I faced challenges as a teenager going to school at Dubuque Senior High School, and it was teachers who actually believed in me and helped me succeed in my education, so they were my heroes. I would like to be that type of person for our students here in the school district. I want to be someone's hero. I would like to be the voice for the unheard. I am currently taking early childhood education at NICC. I am an experienced leader because I did develop a non-profit organization called Switch Your Places Foundation, which brought the community together, and we talked about equity and inclusion. We got national coverage for that. I worked at Hillcrest Family Services for about 5 years. I managed the staff to work with children who have dealt with adverse childhood experiences and needed brain health. So I have a lot of lived experiences that I can bring to the table. I can bring different viewpoints, and I can connect teachers and families together. And that's what I'll do if I'm elected for school board.
Thank you. Ms. Jones, what role should the board play in the selection of curriculum across the district?
Well, that is a good question. I think that is an area that we really want to look to, our higher ed programs as well, and talk with the teachers, really get into they're the ones who, see our kids' needs every day. I don't necessarily believe that the state should be governing the curriculum or limiting anything from the curriculum. And I guess those are areas that I am, learning from and am welcoming resources for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mueller?
Okay. I believe the curriculum should be developed by the teachers with some input from the administration, and that curriculum would be presented to the board for our approval. And I believe we need to analyze that curriculum, but I don't think we need to micromanage classrooms. I do not think that would be our purpose. So but I do think we need to have an overall general feeling of what the goals that we want to teach, what do we want our children to know, because what we develop in our schools is what will eventually become the actual fact of what's in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Prochaska?
Yes. Well, each building and department has a curriculum committee for their major departments that determine what type of curricular materials are used. It's composed of teachers, administrators, building principals, et cetera. And ultimately, these answer to the Director of Secondary Education, Director of Elementary Education. And so for the better part, teacher involvement is very important because they are the ones that are going to be using the curriculum materials. As a teacher, I felt always very glad that I was involved in selecting the textbooks, et cetera, the materials that were used in the classroom, because I was the one that was going to be using it. As far as any passage or anything as far as the board, we don't get that much in the weeds all the time on every single curriculum selection. It'd be kind of overwhelming to do that totally. But it's up to our administrators, Director of Secondary and Elementary Education, to make us aware of things that we need to maybe take a look at.
Thank you. Mr. Sainci?
Yeah, I believe criteria should be made at the state level with room for flexibility for each district throughout the state to do what's best for that district in an equitable way. And I know for us, we've supported efforts at the local level, once that information comes to us, that our teachers are teaching the teachers, so that way they know how to make things culturally relevant for each student that they're serving. That has not only been at the elementary level, but also our secondary level, and that's something we've supported for the past year, and that's something we'll continue to support is the ability for us to have the flexibility to teach every single student in our building and making sure that it's culturally relevant so our students are not only understanding the material, but they're engaged in the classroom setting as well. And so those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Ms. Sanger?
Yes, I love that the experts are making the decision in the curriculum. I'm not a teacher. That's not my voice to be used in that situation. What I do appreciate is having flexibility for the teachers in their own classroom based on the students that they have that align with that curriculum as well. And fostering that flexibility and offering support in specific areas to help that curriculum succeed. So those are specific areas. I do think it's really important for teachers to use their creativity, their voice, and also having a say in what that curriculum looks like as well. As far as the board level, I always think it's an important topic to have conversation and understand. I personally met with the director of elementary education and secondary education, so I felt like I had a better understanding of what the curriculum currently looks like and how that would be addressed in the future. So I think it's through conversation that's really important, and continuing that conversation, listening to the voice of teachers, listening to the voice of parents, and listening to the voice of students as well, and moving forward collaboratively. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Williams-Robinson?
I believe that teachers and educators are the experts, and they should have a say on the curriculums, and I don't think the school board should have a say-so on the curriculum. No, I do not think so. No.
Thank you.
That's it.
Ms. Bradley?
I've led lots of curriculum studies when I was director of elementary education. And I think we have a process in place that's a commendable one. It's been recognized, and we've taught many other districts about our process for selection of curriculum materials. So in a nutshell, curriculum is really a combination of three things. It's the learning standards that we are given by the state that is across all schools. It's the instructional materials, and it's the assessments so that we know and our teachers know if they have that learning in place. So it's done by teams of teachers, and as others have said, it involves principals as well and some central office folks. And in the process, they do an exhaustive review of what materials are available, what are the learning standards, what materials can well match the required learning outcomes, and then what assessments do we need in order to do that. The role of the board, being a policy-making group, is really to receive that recommendation, to hear the rationale for why that recommendation has been made in a final selection of materials, and then to approve and allocate the funding for the purchase of those materials. So I'm delighted with the process in our district, and I'm grateful that it's followed judiciously and involves a lot of voices and a lot of people who bring their expertise to that process.
Thank you. Ms. Mueller, apparently enrollment at Hempstead and Senior is again pulling apart. Hempstead now 150 students more than Senior. Do you support redrawing the school boundaries for population equity?
I believe we should have population equity wherever possible in the school district. And so if it becomes a greater problem, I think we should look at that. Yes, I think that is a good idea.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Prochaska?
Yes, I know recently, yes, that's been the case where the population at Hempstead's been up to 150 or so higher. Prior to that, a few years ago, there was an exact equal amount of students, if you can believe it, at Senior and Hempstead. And this primarily due to the increased population in West End and the fact that right now, I believe Kennedy Road is the cutoff line for Senior and Hempstead. So down the road here, we probably need to look at that to ensure that we have more of a balance. I don't think that 100 or so students is that significant at this point in time. But I know there will be some more building on the south part of town, and that would then be able to eventually increase the Senior population. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Sainci?
Great question. In any decision that we make with the district, it has to be data informed. So first of all, we'll have to look at the data to understand how will this either improve educational outcomes and how will it close the achievement gap. And in the work that we do with the district, we also have a strategic plan for our facilities that we work on. And so that will be a huge priority first, to put our voices together, have a good process where parents and teachers have a voice, to look at every single one of our buildings. And again, we want to make sure that we are improving achievement, we are closing the gaps, we are making sure we're physically responsible. So before we make any decisions, we have to have the data to make an informed decision. And there has to be a good process, because we can never forget, and we're always reminded on the board by Mr. Barton, that the people own the joint. And so there has to be a good process before we make any decision like that.
Thank you. Ms. Sanger.
Yes, thank you. I think population equity is important. However, I also think it's important to note that there are constant shifts in our community of people moving to different areas, and that shift is going to be different from year to year. I think one thing that we need to look at is, again, is outcomes. What do our outcomes look like? What does our testing look like? Are we lacking in support? Do they have sufficient support? I think it's important to look not just at the number, but at the school as a full scope. Do they have the correct resources they need to succeed in that specific school? So while I do believe it's important, I think it's essential to look at that from year to year and see how it shifts and how we can overcome some struggles if they are before we make that move to redistrict.
Thank you. Ms. Williams-Robinson?
Just to my understanding, I believe that that state funding, our schools are underfunded. So if that is going to make a difference in like the funding of the schools, and I guess we should take a look at that. And like Anderson said, we need to look at the achievement gaps and see where we can close these gaps, and if that's, and gather all the information and make informed decisions on if this is going to hurt or help with those gaps, and if we're going to be underfunded because of this.
Thank you. Ms. Bradley?
Thank you. In a school population at our two large high schools that ranges between 1,600 and 1,800, I'm not at all concerned about a difference of 150 students. As Ms. Sanger said, that varies a bit from year to year, sometimes up, sometimes down in a given school. What I would want to see, and I do want to see, is three factors, however. Number one is the staffing appropriate for the number of students. Number two is the space adequate for the number of students. And number three is there equity of programs and activities for the students, such that regardless of which of the two high schools you were in, and regardless of the numbers, it would be similar opportunities. So I think those are the factors. Some years ago, we redrew the high school lines to equalize or bring closer some of the student demographic issues. And we continue to see that being a very commensurate kind of distribution of student demographics. So 150 students, not concerned at all.
Thank you. And Ms. Jones?
Yes, I guess I would echo what Nancy was just speaking of. I do believe that is not an efficient number to be considering redrawing the lines at this point. There's lots of fluctuations with populations. There does seem to be a move out towards that north end of town, so it might be something that we need to look to in the future. I do also think, that equality, the resources there at each school? Can they handle the staffing, the behaviors, all of those needs? Are they met at each single facility? And if not, then maybe we need to relook at things. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Prochaska, this year in August, students lost 10 hours of instructional time because of excessive heat. What's your position on providing air conditioning in all school buildings?
It's a great question. Like most things, it's a work in progress. We are right now Many of our elementary schools are air-conditioned, many are not. Senior high school is going to be totally air-conditioned once Phase 2 is completed. Our theory there is that most of the kids are eventually going to funnel through the high school. So we've done a lot of our renovations, et cetera, at our high schools because all the students of our district are going to end up at the high schools. Down the road here, eventually in a few years, there's going to be some movement to combine some of our elementary schools. At that point in time, I think that will be the decision then to make. We're going to combine our elementary schools to make them more efficient, to basically save the district money. At that point in time, we will look to air condition whatever additions or new school or whatever is done to combine the elementary schools. So at this point, I don't think the elementary schools will see any change in the air conditioning, but it's something to look at down the road.
Thank you. Mr. Sainci.
Well, I have the privilege of being on a few of the committees that we have with the district. One happens to be the facility, and I know part of the conversations we've been having for a while, once senior is officially complete, we'll look again at our plan for the future. So just being forward-thinking and making sure that we look at what are the buildings we need to focus on for the next 5 to 10 years to set our kids up for a brighter future. And so that will be something we'll focus on, making sure we have a clear plan that identifies what are we going to do for our elementary, our middle school, and high school, and looking forward to the future opportunities to build new buildings. And are there opportunities to trade land to make sure that, again, all of our kids and teachers have a good education, process. And so the first step, again, is making sure we have a clear plan that aligns with our strategic plan, that there's a good process to make sure people and voices are heard, and making sure that all of our kids have a brighter and better future. There is a need right now, but we can't lose sight that there needs to be a clear goal and a clear plan to move our district forward, and we have to be financially responsible while doing it.
Thank you. Ms. Sanger?
Yes, I think right now we're in the midst of the senior project, Phase 2, which I think is incredibly important, but it's also important to look future focused and be future focused. And so I do think these are important conversations to have, but I think they need to involve the people in our community especially, in understanding what individuals, our teachers, staff, and district want our community to look like in the future. Do I think air conditioning is a proper thing right now? I think it's looking at how are we financially solvent, and how can we be responsible with our budget. And again, I think it includes looking at everything full scope and involving all in that conversation and what that looks like. I know there are a lot of other projects and priorities, and everybody sees each of those projects and priorities in a different way. So I think it's important, again, to have that dialogue and talk together as a community to how we want to move forward for the next large capital project for the district.
Thank you. Ms. Williams-Robinson?
There's a lot of, I just want to go back to like the achievement gaps that are going on in some of our schools, and kids losing and not being able to attend school. It's really important for them to be there in order to be successful. Funding may be an issue with the air conditioning. I don't have a lot of information on that because I'm new to this. However, I do think that it would be something important that we do need to look forward to doing in the future so that our kids are able to focus on their education and be able to be present in class.
Thank you. Ms. Bradley?
You know, the 10 hours of lost learning time is a concern, of course. It is Iowa. It's hot at the beginning of the year, it's hot at the end of the year, and predictably we lose learning time. Others have mentioned the 10-year facility plan. That's a plan where we look ahead to the needs of each of our 19 buildings and schools and say, where are upgrades needed? Where are improvements needing to have happen? And in the process, we have a map for that. As others have said, we review it annually. But the tipping point for me on this issue is that about 60% of our instructional space is air conditioned now. So when the heat gets intense and you're on the 3rd floor of a WPA school and it's 105, no learning happens and it won't happen. So when do we reach a point where enough of this instructional space is air conditioned that we need to finish the job? And so that becomes a part of the annual review of the 10-year facility plan. And as others have said, we are in the process, that's actually on the plan, out there a ways, and it will be continued to be reviewed. I think that the learning loss is the central issue. It is really not about how comfortable are we, it's about can learning occur. And if the learning cannot occur, then we contribute to some students' loss of learning, and that's not okay. 60% air-conditioned space begs the question, then I believe, what do we need to do the rest?
Thank you. Ms. Jones?
Yes. My daughter is in second grade at Irving, and she happens to be in one of the spaces that is unair conditioned and very little ventilation or airflow through any windows in that very old building. And it was very difficult for her and her classmates to focus on learning and wearing a mask. And, you combine those two things. I think over this past year and a half, we have learned how important ventilation systems can be and just overall health for our bodies. Not just talking about COVID, I'm talking about in the wintertime, with the respiratory illnesses that are going around. And I do believe that air conditioning within all of the buildings would be beneficial for health, wellness, and just being able to focus. I also understand that there are new projects in works, and we want to be fiscally responsible. We don't want to put in a brand new air duct and air conditioning system in a school that is only going to be used for a shorter period of time. So I would say we need to look ahead at those areas, those buildings, and put a fiscally responsible plan together to get those air conditioned.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Sainci?
All right,
Oh, I'm
thank you, Ms.
sorry,
Warren.
I did it again. What are we up to?
We want to hear Cindy.
Ms. Mueller.
Yeah,
Ms.
do I?
Mueller, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I had you marked off already.
Mine.
Sorry.
Currently, 6 of our elementary schools are fully air conditioned, but 7 others are not. And currently, of course, Roosevelt is air conditioned because it's a newer school, but Jefferson is only 22% air conditioned and Washington is only 12%. So these inequities cause us to have to close school and lose instructional time, which when you think about it, we've paid for the curriculum, the staff, the buses, the lunches, we get the students there and then we send them home. So we're losing out on that. I started teaching in 1973. It's been a problem for 50 years, and I think it's time we make this a top priority because I think otherwise it won't get done. So that we, 50 years from now, are not looking at the same problem. So it needs to be a top priority. We do need to look for alternative sources of funding. We do need to think about securing properties so that we can have equitable facilities in all areas of our district. We need to look at working with the city council and the county and possibly trading properties, possibly repurposing some of our older school buildings so that they can be used for different things by the city or by the county. If a building is going to be sold or repurposed, I don't see any problem in air conditioning it even now. The only thing we would have to decide as a board is that building going to come down for some reason? If it's going to be torn down, then obviously you don't want to put air conditioning in that building.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Mr. Sainci. Under district policy, a child showing symptoms is given a rapid COVID test. Results can take days before they're known. The family could pay to get a rapid test at Epic to get quicker results. Do you support this policy? And if not, what would you suggest?
Yeah, right now, and I've been very intentional on trying to work with our Dubuque County to make sure that all of our families have resources to get the test that they choose to. And so I do support any efforts to make sure that if families want to make that choice for themselves, they can have that resources available. And we're always looking for different partners to do what's best for each and every single one of our students.
Thank you. Ms. Sanger?
Yeah, I think it's important that to see the school board as a resource and a connection point, and to help guide students and families in accessing any need, whatever that is. So I think that's incredibly important, to listen, to hear them, and to help support them in any way that they possibly need in regards to testing. So if it is an indication that they would prefer rapid testing, helping them connect that to that point. I do know that the school district provides testing as well, and that goes to families that do request it because they indicate that they do not have access. And I do appreciate that that is available to families if they choose to utilize that service. If not, we have many, many medical health, wonderful health experts here in our community, and I think it's important to leave that aspect of health and health profession up to them.
Thank you. Ms. Williams-Robinson?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes, it's about the district policy of testing. The questioner wants to know if you can't get the rapid test and you can pay $75 through Epic, do you support the policy of the school district helping with that, like some of the other candidates have mentioned, or do you have another suggestion?
Yeah, I support the school district helping with that because it's important to make sure that all of our kids are safe and are in a healthy environment. And in order to prevent the spread of COVID, we should work together to help make sure that that doesn't happen. So yeah, I do support that.
Thank you. Ms. Bradley?
I believe that we need to do everything possible within our means to have immediate testing available to our families at no cost to them. If possible, it should be rapid testing. My understanding is rapid testing is almost not available within the community right now, readily at least. But we need an increase in our testing program. I'm thrilled that the district has started making available the tests that take 3 to 5 days. At least now we have that available, and that is available to anybody who needs it in our schools at no cost. But I'm interested in us getting a rapid testing program, as well as I wish that we could have more requirements about reporting test results, and more requirements and more options available to us for tracing, so that anyone who's exposed, anyone who is showing any kinds of symptoms in our schools immediately has that rapid test available, and it's available to them at no cost. So I think safety of our students and our staff is paramount. It's the role of the board to assure that, and we should do everything we possibly can do.
Thank you. Ms. Jones?
Yes, so more testing is definitely needed in the school system, especially when the school board makes decisions, based on percentage of the dashboard. But how do we know what our percentage is? That's not accurate information if we aren't doing more testing. That data just isn't there, right? So there's allotted COVID funds, both that have been distributed to the school district and to the county. I know that the county is very interested in getting, they would partner to get rapid testing machines in all of our facilities. I think that would be an excellent answer to the issue. That way, any child who is exposed, who has any symptoms, is able to get a rapid test that day, free of cost. Parents aren't driving around trying to find a test in the middle of the night, and it's not further burdening our healthcare workers because they are overworked, and it allows them to take care of the people that really need emergent care or acute care. So I'm definitely for more testing in our schools, and I would echo that contact tracing definitely needs improvement there. That should be under 72 hours of exposure. That should always be the goal. And with better testing and turnaround time, I think that would solve that problem. And then, of course, better education and support around the quarantine and isolation.
Thank you. Ms. Mueller?
I would agree that students that are showing symptoms of COVID should be provided with a rapid test from the school district. I know that's not possible right at the moment because of the availability of testing, but I think that is the ultimate goal. And I think if the city or the county or the school district can ever cooperate on anything, They should, because after all, the tax money is coming from the same taxpayers, so we're all supporting those groups. So whatever cooperation can happen should happen there.
Thank you. Mr. Prochaska.
Yeah, basically right now, the way I see it is parents are a little bit on the honor system where they could have their child tested or could not. And this obviously does influence the statistics that we're looking at as far as the positivity rates in the schools. If you don't have tests, you don't know. If you don't have the data, tests, you don't know what you have. And so testing is very, very important. I know the turnaround time for some of these tests that are provided by the state, the ones that we just purchased, is like, I think it's about 3 days. And the rapid test is not available, and I know it's also rather expensive. I don't think it's covered under the state plan. So we need more testing, I agree, in order to make a decent decision on our positivity rate. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sanger, if the decision is made to not close any elementary or middle schools, what acts do you support to improve the economic balance at our schools? Or do you feel that the present situation is acceptable?
From my understanding, there is a pretty good economic balance at each of the schools when it comes to financials. I think a lot of that stems down to as well, parent organizations and support. I know that's been a huge topic of conversation. I have children that go to Eisenhower, and their PTO is very strong. Now, I know not every school is in that same situation. So I think if there's economic imbalances, a lot of that stems down to support as well. So I think it's important where we feel like we need additional support to determine what that is per school, and understand what their needs are, and talk about that as a district and talk about that as a board as well, and support that to our best ability. I think collaboration is a huge part as well. We have so many organizations out there that are willing to step in and play a role as well, and utilizing those collaborations to help fill in the gaps too. But from my understanding and from meeting with Kevin at the school district there in the finance department, there is a pretty good balance when it comes to funds that are distributed per school. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Williams-Robinson?
As far as the funds that are distributed to each schools, I don't know that information. However, I do know that there are certain schools that are struggling more than others, and those schools are the schools that have the higher concentration of minorities and people who are experiencing poverty. And so, in my opinion, I feel like we do need to work together with other community programs like Black Men's Coalition, Dream Center, to try to fill those achievement gaps. I don't believe that there is, the gaps are in certain areas and in certain schools. So like as far as like the parent teachers organizations, the kids that go to Prescott don't have parents with a lot of money who are able to get, to raise funds for their schools. So yes, they are in more need. So we need to look at those schools that are in more need, and we need to do what we need to do and partner with different programs and come up with our own programs if we have to be able to fill those gaps and make sure all of our kids are succeeding in their education.
Thank you. Ms. Bradley?
Could I bother you to read the question again, just so I
Yes.
understand?
If all the elementary and middle schools stay open, how can the board support economic balance at all the schools?
So by economic balance, are you talking about student demographics, socioeconomic status of students?
I'm sorry, I don't know.
Okay.
This
All right.
is a question submitted by a member of the public.
Okay, sure.
Without a lot of elaboration.
But the issue there is economic balance.
Yes.
Okay, a few issues around that. Number one, funding to public education in Iowa has dropped to 31st in the nation. So what we're dealing with is the reality of inadequate funding at the state level to public education in Iowa. To be 31st in the nation, why? So that concerns me greatly as members of the board. I believe we have a strong responsibility to be advocating for much stronger funding, much more adequate funding to public education. Secondly, many districts have balanced their imbalanced budgets based on class sizes. I'm proud to say we have not. Our class sizes have not been the linchpin for balancing a budget. We have kept them at a reasonable rate. However, we're very unusual in that. What I do not support is increasing class sizes to balance the budget. So when superintendent brought us the notion of facility savings in going from some small schools to somewhat larger, not huge, I would not support that. But in terms of somewhat of an increase, I think that that has merit to explore because it would save about $5 million a year, which would save a whole lot of people and programs from being lost to our programming. So in terms of funds being given to schools, that's equal. What is unequal, or in one sense, is that based on certain student demographics, some additional positions are given to the Title I schools because of their greater density of need.
Thank you. Ms. Jones?
I am in agreement that state funding is insufficient. It has been for a long time, and I think we have opportunity to work with our local legislators to really have them push for us at the state level to increase funding to Iowa, to our public schools. I also believe, that there are more needs in certain elementary schools. So those needs need greater resources, greater community involvement. So more funding does need to go to address those behaviors and to support the teaching staff and all of the out-of-school barriers that those kids are facing. So I would say more funding and giving to schools with greater needs.
Thank you. Ms. Mueller?
A study was done by our administration that said if 2 of our smaller middle schools were combined into one larger middle school comparable to Roosevelt, we could save $3.8 million per year in the operating expenses by having a lack of duplication in administration and also through the utilities, saving on utilities. And likewise, if two-section elementary schools were combined into one 4-section elementary school, you could save $1 million for every 2 schools that you would combine into one. So as Nancy said, that would give you $5 to $6 million per year, each year, that would go into your operating expenses. And that could be used for salaries, benefits, educational programs, or even to reducing property taxes. In the absence of doing that, in the absence of reducing the number of buildings for which we're responsible for, then your only options are to go to the state and say, hey, we need more money, or to go to the local taxpayers and say, hey, we need more property tax money, we need more money to keep our schools going. The good thing about reducing the number of buildings we're responsible for is that that would be a one-time capital expense. Granted, it's a big one, but if we could get to that point, then the benefits would go on for like 80 to 100 years, like the age of our buildings now, each year into the different funds of the operating expenses. So building funds and operating expenses are separate.
Thank you. Mr. Prochaska?
Yes, I think everybody's kind of said it a little bit, but I'll kind of add to it. Our funding per district is restricted by the state. And basically, the funding per pupil in all of our schools is pretty much the same. In some of our schools, though, there's a greater need for specialists, et cetera, special education, et cetera. So consequently, there's more funding that's directed to those schools. Likewise, some of our schools, and Nancy has alluded to this, some of our schools have a very small class size. So we try to accommodate for some of the special needs situations, et cetera, by making smaller class sizes. down the road addressing the middle school issue. I think that there are some plans down the road to do something with our middle school to save, as Cindy said, that $4 million a year. And this would also give a socioeconomic balance to the middle schools. And that's something to look forward to down the road here. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's going to happen shortly.
Thank you. Mr. Sainci.
Yeah, economic imbalance is nothing new. Most people here know I love sharing stories. So visiting schools, I remember a teacher telling me, Mr. Anderson, I have to unpack what's in my child's book bag. And I looked like, what are you talking about? She mentioned to me, I don't know if my child is hungry, if they saw someone get beat up at home, if there's brain health issues. So these are not new issues. So what do I think we need to do? Number one, make sure every single district has equitable funding, period. Number two, pay teachers what they deserve, period. You want to keep good talent? Make sure our teachers get what they deserve. Number three, we got to make sure we have equitable resources. So what do I mean? We got to make sure those who are achieving at a high level have what they need to continue to achieve. Those in the middle, we want to continue to give them the service that they need so that they can achieve. And we want to make sure at the same time we're closing the achievement gap. And one thing that we can do, let's scale co-teaching throughout every single building in our schools where there's 3 teachers supporting one another. So that will support the brain health, the mental health, food hunger, if there's any behavior issues. Those are key things and simple things that we can do at all levels. But first, it's making sure we have the equitable resources we need. And each citizen that's watching this right now, you can play a role by making sure your legislators know that the district needs equitable funding. By doing that, we will align with the governor's initiative to make sure all of our kids are future Iowa ready.
Thank you. Ms. Williams-Robinson. There was a vote October 11th on the school board for 2 motions regarding masking at the community schools. First was for all masking. Second was for masking for buildings with positivity rates of 3% and higher. How would you have voted for the 2 motions regarding the masking?
Well, I'm not a medical expert. From what I've learned is that the Center for Disease Control does recommend that we take preventable measures when it comes to COVID, whether it be social distancing, wearing a mask, or washing your hands consistently. To me, those 3 things, the hardest thing to do is social distance. You can't social distance in schools because the classrooms are, there are a lot of kids in the classroom. There's a lot of students in the schools, so social distancing is not an option, really. Making sure children wash their hands consistently is not an easy job for a teacher with 25 kids in the classroom. Wearing a mask is the simplest thing you can do to prevent the spread of COVID. So in my opinion, I would have voted for the mask because I don't think we should wait till numbers go up to start preventing something. I think we should prevent it before it happens. So in my opinion, I would have voted for masks to be worn before any numbers go up or anything like that.
Thank you. Ms. Bradley?
Well, I've been pretty much on record in terms of where I stand on safety and keeping our kids and our staff safe. I believe that the science proves that masks have made a difference. They reduce the spread of the disease, and that we have children under the age of 12 who cannot be vaccinated. And so that combination of things for me would have made my preference to be that everyone, students and staff, wear masks. Absent the ability to pass that motion, I supported the motion to have masks for all pre-kindergarten through 6th grade students because they're under the age of vaccinatableness. And that was unable to be passed, so I was ultimately supported the motion to go with the 3% positivity rate masking school by school because it was better than nothing, frankly. And so the science tells us to be as safe as we can. The data, Mr. Prochaska has already talked about how inadequate the data is. It's the best we have. In many parts of it, it's all we're allowed to do, but it is not adequate for decision-making, in my opinion, for the decision of safety and precaution. Legally, we've been advised that all children have to have a free and affordable public education. That means that we can't have children who can't be in school because we don't have a masking environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jones?
Yeah, thank you. In short answer, I would say yes, I would have voted for masking during periods of high transmission in the county. The school district is not a separate entity from the community. It's part of the community. So if we have high transmission in the county, we have high transmission in the schools. And as Nancy was just saying, we don't have the data in the schools because we don't have the testing. So to use a percentage just really isn't consistent. So I would say, you know, it's a very fluid situation, and we as a district and community just really all need to come together as one, be good role models for our children, because it's all about learned behavior. I think that every child deserves a safe environment to learn in. We're supposed to be an all-inclusive educational system in the public schools. So I don't think that a family should be forced to choose between the health of their child and letting them learn alongside of their peers. With that being said, it is a fluid situation. So with also the addition, I think that we need to bring back and be more strict on, you know, social distancing where we can. We might not have the 6 feet, but we can do 3. Keeping into pods during periods of high transmission, more frequent hand sanitizations. There's a lot of other things than just the mask. I know that's the very hot topic, but all these things together, and everybody needs to wear a mask to make it effective.
Thank you. Ms. Mueller?
Okay. I believe that masks and vaccines should be optional. Wearing a mask is not a simple thing for many people. We hear many people talk to us about the problems that their children have, people with asthma who bought 4 times the medication that they normally do because their child was wearing a mask, people that have are just really bothered by it to the point where it affects their brain health through depression or through agitation. And just with everyone is affected by the fact that you lose the facial expression and you lose your focus because you're wearing a mask. So this is a distraction, and the younger the child, the more the distraction. So I really liked the motion that Jim made at that meeting about the 3% threshold, that when there is a 3% threshold for positivity rate in a particular building, then students will be asked to wear a mask just for a few days until that positivity rate goes down. And so I think that is the best course of action right now, and I support it, and that's how I would have voted. I would have voted no on the first one and yes on the second one.
Thank you. Mr. Prochaska?
Yes. Well, I'm a science teacher, or was a science teacher, still am. And I believe in science. I believe in vaccines. I believe in masks. I believe in the professionals that give us all the advice, all the physicians, the pediatricians, et cetera, all the associations that recommend vaccination, recommend mask wearing. The all mask mandate came out 331, the pre-K 6, which I supported the all mask mandate. I supported the pre-K 6 mask mandate because those kids do not have a chance to be vaccinated. So as to kind of come to a common ground situation, kind of a compromise, I felt like we had to do something. And so we discussed, after my motion, discussed a little bit and tweaked the motion to some extent. And we ended up with the 3%. And, you know, it's something, as Nancy said, it's something that's better than nothing. I'm glad we did that. We kind of followed some of the other school districts, which is fine. But at least we have something. And whether our data is accurate or not does remain to be seen. But I'm glad that we have something in place at this point in time. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sainci?
Yeah, I'm excited with the direction that we went. It was very tough. I've heard from many people from all sides, from all walk of life. First of all, we talk about data, and I've talked to a few of you, I think many of you outside of this, and we said, well, there's not good enough data. Then what is your decision based off of? You can't make an informed decision without good data. And so if we don't have the data and you don't like our data, that means we need to focus on building an infrastructure to get good data. So the rapid testing was something that I try to work behind the scenes with many people to make sure we can work with the county to make sure that it's accessible for everyone. Number two, I think by having 3% in each building, we're not only looking at the physical health, which I think there's some of us who are only looking at that, but we're not considering the brain health. You tell me what to do when you have a mother or a father or a caregiver saying, you know what, you're killing my child physically, right? You tell me what you're supposed to do. This common ground right here makes sure that everyone has a choice still. And then we can pinpoint to a data that says, hey, look, if it gets to this level, come on, everyone, let's put that mask on temporarily. If it stays down, you have the choice to do what's best for you and your family. But without that data, I ask all of you, how do you make an informed decision? What's going on in the county? That's different communities. Rural, urban, we're different communities. Everything starts local. We have to look at the data that we have, and if we don't have good data, let's build a good data infrastructure with the community to make sure kids and teachers are safe. But we can't forget the physical and the mental health of every single student and teacher in this district.
Thank you. Ms. Sanger.
Yes, first of all, Nancy, Jim, Anderson, thank you for sitting through hours of conversation and countless emails. I know I received responses, so I applaud you for that. When we talk about health, health looks different for everyone. It can be our physical health, but I think one important thing to note is our brain health. And I want to throw out a statistic because it is pretty alarming. The American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, and the Children's Hospital Association declared brain health a national emergency. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention that found between March and October of 2020, the proportion of mental health related emergency department visits increased 24% for children ages 5 to 11 and 31% for children ages 12 to 17. That's an alarming statistic. And when we talk about health, the amount of people that came up, parents, children, kids, all of them saying this is an issue, this is what I'm feeling. My own child felt it, and I think it's important to recognize that. So I would like to focus on ways that we can prevent COVID, whether that be wellness and movement and the food and how we're nourishing our bodies in other way and directing the conversation to that versus solely focusing on COVID and the cases that we have. And we do know that transmission rate is really low among our children from what we can see from the district platform. So I think it's important to, again, pay attention to other issues.
Thank you. Ms. Bradley, this next question deals with school, with discipline of students. I think it's two-part. What should the board's position on zero tolerance be? And is removing students from the classroom a suitable discipline for disruptive students?
That's a very good question. It's a complex question. As an elementary principal for 15 years, I've dealt with lots of different behavior concerns and issues. The idea of zero tolerance is conceptually, I believe, a right issue. However, when we've been talking about brain health, when we look at some of our children and the kinds of needs and issues and complexities that they bring to class with them every day, we need to work with where that child is. Absolutely, our goal is zero tolerance. Absolutely, compliant behavior and successful behavior is what we want for each and all of our students. And so zero tolerance, I see it on a continuum. We want to get there with everyone. We need to work our way there with some students more than with others. In terms of removing students, that comes down to safety of them for themselves and for others. If we have a child who is out of control, who absolutely is a danger to him or herself, is a danger to others, we must remove them from that setting, get them to safety, go into de-escalation mode so that children can become all that they can be as learners and are not out of control, potentially injuring themselves or others. So I see removing children from classrooms only for the purpose of getting them calmed down, ready to learn again, to get back into that classroom. Other than that, we need everybody, through COVID, through everything, we need in-person learning.
Thank you. Ms. Jones?
Yeah, this is, we've seen behaviors climbing at an alarming rate this year. The children have been facing more out-of-school barriers throughout the pandemic, adverse childhood experiences. They show up in our classroom and have a negative impact on that child, the teacher, and the entire classroom. But we also need to have more tolerance right now, and understanding that these kids are facing a lot right now, and maybe giving a little leeway to that. As far as removing kids from classrooms, I would say that would be a last resort. I'm not in favor of that. I think that can have further negative effects on the children. They should be present in the classroom. But that being said, I also recognize that our teachers and staff are very limited. They have limited resources, limited tools, limited training. And so sometimes those things are necessary when the child is in immediate danger to themselves or to someone else. But they're also, that's a great opportunity of why we need to be hiring more social workers, more counselors, more brain health professionals who can de-escalate situations, and more training for the teachers as well. Those things, that's just what we need so our teachers can teach and not be asked to be everything else.
Thank you. Ms. Mueller?
I believe that students that have major behavioral problems should either have extra staff in the room to help the regular classroom teacher, or should be removed from the classroom. I don't think a teacher should be asked to do behavior management and teach the class at the same time, and I think that inhibits the learning of the other students in the class. But removing the student from the class should not be looked at as a punishment, but rather as a help, and they should be taken out to help with whatever problem they have. We should have staff that can help them. And as my old principal used to say, with students, every day is a new day. So you never hold what happened the day before against the student. When they come into school the next day, everything is 100% fresh and you start over. And so I think we just need to keep working with these students, keep removing them until eventually they are able to stay in the classroom without disrupting what's going on.
Thank you. Mr. Prochaska?
Yeah, the term zero tolerance is kind of too much of an absolute value to me. You're dealing with human beings, and everybody's got their own issues, problems, etc. So that in itself, I don't think that flies. Zero tolerance, period. As far as removing students for disruption, yes, I think that if a student is in a classroom to the point to where it distracts from the other students' learning, or the inability of the teacher to conduct the class, then I think that student should be removed and should be counseled, given the benefit of the doubt, and try to see what the first cause is, what's the real issue that's going on. Often there are things that happen at home, et cetera, and something that nobody else knows about. It's causing this disruptive behavior. I would like to add here that when our parents were surveyed after what they'd like to see us use our ESSER funds on, the number one response by parents was brain health. So this brain health issue that many of you have talked about, it is a big issue. Parents are aware of it. And so whatever we can do, it's a priority, whatever we can do for kids, because that's what we're in the business for. We're in the business of kids. Whatever we can do for them is very valuable, very important.
Thank you. Mr. Sainci?
Yeah, let me just echo something Jim just said. I don't like the word zero tolerance because who gets to determine that, right? And history just has shown us that zero tolerance will have a negative outcome on poor students and students that look like me. And so I believe all of our teachers need the tools and the flexibility to do what's best in their building, right? Because if you remove any student, who's going to educate the students? So this is why, again, I believe we need to have co-teaching in all of our buildings, because if any student is having any challenges, it could be brain issues, it could be hunger, whatever, you have additional support staff in there that can address that student needs. And so we do need to focus on co-teaching. We do need to make sure all of our teachers have the tools that they need to unpack, like that teacher told me, unpack what's in their student's book bag to make sure that, again, that child has everything they need to maximize their full potential. But zero tolerance, that's going to have a negative outcome on poor and kids that look like me, and I don't support that.
Thank you. Ms. Sanger?
Yeah, I met with a mother who has a son that has an IEP, and he was just having a bad week. Well, what happened was he just didn't have enough para support that day. So it wasn't that one-on-one attention that he needed. So he was acting out. And from there, the parents had to step in, they had to help, they had to take off work, and it was an additional burden. It was a hard thing for them to have to handle while managing full-time jobs. I think it's really important to recognize that oftentimes, more than not, there's more than meets the eye than just the behavior in itself. One thing that I think we need to be paying attention is how are we equipping our teachers and our paras to handle that circumstance where a child is acting out? Are we providing breathing techniques? Are we providing additional resources? Are we providing a safe space for them to go in that act, to calm down and just breathe through it? I think that's really important, and one thing that I think we are doing properly as a district is we're using some of those ESSER ARP funding to ensure that we have brain health support through rooms in our high schools, that where we have a full-time staff member to address those brain health issues, where children can go to decompress and again to be themselves. I would love to see those in each and every school because I do think it's needed. A safe space for children to go when they need it the most.
Thank you. Ms. Williams-Robinson?
As others have stated, there is a lot of out-of-school barriers that that are probably reasons why children are having behaviors. So zero tolerance, I would not agree with that. We need to be more understanding. We need to be compassionate. Teachers need to build relationships with children and their families in order to understand where they're coming from and why they're having the behaviors that they have. Some children experience death at young ages. Some children, like they said before, are hungry and they can't concentrate on anything but are they going to eat or when their next meal is going to be. So yes, if a child is being disruptive in the classroom, they should be removed because other children's education are at risk and the teacher needs to be able to educate the rest of her classroom. However, where they're going is what I'm concerned with. Are they going to an in-school suspension? Are they going to an intervention where they're going to be de-escalated, where they're going to be talked to? We're going to try to come to an understanding of why they are feeling the way they're feeling so that we can prevent it from the next time. Again, yes, we do need social workers in the school, counselors, and extra support for our teachers so they're not dealing with these behaviors. I spoke to a teacher at a school and she told me that 40% of her classroom has IEPs. So that's not okay. We have to make sure, one, that they're not all concentrated in one classroom in one school. We need to make sure we can kind of like spread it out a little bit and make sure one teacher is not dealing with 40% of her classrooms with behaviors. But we also need to build relationships between families and teachers in the school.
Thank you. Ms. Jones, would you support modifying bus routes so that children who walk to school can get to school during inclement weather and to reduce absenteeism?
Yes, I think that I would support that. I think that, transportation continues to be an issue in the district. There again, we need increased funding at the state level. And we never want getting to and from school to be a reason that a child is missing out on education. So adapting our school buses to place it to areas where there are more barriers, more accessibility to the school itself would be beneficial. I also think that's a great opportunity for community resources to come in and help out PTO organizations, things like that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mueller?
I think this is one area where perhaps we could work with the city council and with the Jewel bus system. And I would like to see if we can have some school bus routes where we're using the city buses and the city bus drivers, and maybe cut down on the amount of money we have to spend buying school buses and hiring bus drivers, et cetera. If the students are on a city bus route or within the city limits, I would like to go that way. Naturally, if they're outside the city limits and we're talking about modifying bus routes, I think it's very important that every student get to school, obviously. So whatever we have to do there. But yes, so I would look at modifying bus routes, whatever we can do. But once again, I think it would be a good idea to look at what the Jewel system can do for us that we have right here in the city, and how we can coordinate with the city council on that.
Thank you. Mr. Prochaska?
Yeah, I think if I read the question correctly, you're saying during inclement weather, change the bus routes?
The question was, the perception is there's increased absenteeism in inclement weather because of lack of transportation.
Right. Well, in some respects, we're governed a little bit by the state, which says that basically if, I believe it's elementary, if they live over 2 miles away from the school, they are bused. And in secondary, I believe it's 3 miles. So those bus routes are kind of all settled to begin with, beginning of the year. I suppose it's something that could be looked at, but the inclement weather, like we're talking about a 2-hour delay, 1-hour delay, we're talking fog. There's a lot of issues that come into play. It's a pretty complicated issue. One thing that's taking place right now in our school districts, I think, and I've observed this at many schools, is that parents, the traffic jams around some of our middle schools, I'm talking about Washington in particular, Irving, these are the ones that I frequent at their opening times. The traffic jams are tremendous around there. And so, I mean, that's an issue in itself. Parents are providing a lot of their own transportation right now, but we're talking maybe about some that do not want their children to walk in the rainy weather, et cetera. Yeah, it's an issue, and I think it could be looked at, but it'd be a tough one to do.
Thank you. Mr. Sainci?
Well, Jim just threw me an alley hoop, and I want to dunk it. And so we do have our district looking into that right now with that pilot program that you're talking about. And so we'll be looking at that data to see if we are improving attendance for our students. So to all those parents who are watching right now, we will be looking at that, and there will be more to come to see if we improved anything.
Thank you. Ms. Sanger?
Yeah, I think this is definitely a city and school related issue, and it's a collaboration that needs to happen and a conversation that needs to happen as well. I think this also stems back to the importance of neighborhood schools and ensuring that we are having proper sidewalks for families to be walking on, and that they have a safe, walkable, and bikeable environment to get to school in the first place. So I think that's the very first thing that we need to address in ensuring that we are providing that service to them. Beyond that, it's a systematic issue, a whole systematic issue that needs to be looked at full scope. Again, it's something that's extremely complex, but I also think it's extremely important. We want to ensure that every school has the ability, or every student has the ability to get to school every single day. And the last thing I want is weather to be a barrier. So it's definitely a conversation that needs to be had, city and school again. And I definitely think it's something that will be talked about in the near future.
Thank you. Ms. Williams-Robinson?
Transportation is a huge barrier for children who experience lower incomes. 2 miles is a really far walk when you have to walk up a huge hill. And if you're a single parent and you have a child who is in the 2nd grade, and then you have also a baby and you don't have a car, you have to choose between whether you're going to take your baby outside in extreme weather and walk your child to school, or are you going to just not send your child to school? So the busing policy needs to be relooked at. Yes, it does. City buses are great. However, they're usually overly packed, and a lot of kids experience being bullied on those city buses. I know this from firsthand experience. I was bullied on the city bus going to school, and it was overly packed. I had to stand up. I couldn't even sit down. So yes, that could be an option, but we need to look at whether, we can get parents to come together and see if they can help out in this situation if we don't have enough funds. Maybe be willing to carpool and pick kids up from school. That's one way that we can deal with that issue. But I do know that coming from where I come from, transportation is a huge gap, and it does have a lot to do with kids not attending school.
Thank you. Ms. Bradley?
I guess quite simply, my heart wants to do that. My head says the cost of doing that would make us take from some other things that I would not want us to take from in order to increase the cost of busing. The bus system in the Dubuque Community School District with 10,300 students, and a good portion of them bused. I don't know what that is, what percentage. It's like a 1,000-piece reversible puzzle, and to put that all together and have that operate every day as magnificently as it does requires more limited flexibility than we would like to have. And so while I would like to be able to say, yes, let's do that, I don't quite understand how we would be able to do that without great additional cost. I'm delighted that we do make available, when space is available on a bus and the child is able to access a bus that's going by or nearby, we allow for students to purchase that service to be able to ride the bus, and I'm thrilled with that. But the complexity of bus routing and the cost of running buses makes me very cautious to say that that's a doable, great idea.
Thank you. This will be our last question, and we'll start with you, Ms. Mueller. It deals with research pertaining to the need for teenagers to have more sleep, especially in the morning. Do you think the district should have later starting dates and later closing dates? Times, in the afternoon.
I know many years ago they were talking about perhaps we should be starting the elementary schools earlier and the middle schools later and the high schools later because of that same issue that you say. Yeah, I think that's something we could look at, our start times and our end times. I would presume that's a problem for parents on the other end of the day when some students get off at 2:30 in the afternoon and many parents are still working till 5. So yeah, that is something I would be willing to research and look at and discuss. Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Prochaska?
Yes, being a high school teacher, I had many students who were in class, first period, head down, tired. They had to close at their business last night or whatever they were working, they had a job. So that 7:30 or 7:25, when it was at the time, yeah, that was pretty early. As a matter of fact, when I first got on the board, I highly advocated for this. I know Nancy for sure and I were discussing this. I don't know if Anderson, if you were on at the time, but I think you were. Anyway, the district administration did look at it. They figured out that they didn't want to just flip-flop the elementary and the secondary, but they wanted to do kind of like maybe like Western Dubuque does. There's a lot of school districts. Everybody goes at the same time. Well, that would necessitate then purchasing more buses. And I don't remember the exact figure, but it was like, I don't know, 30-some more buses, ballpark-ish. And so consequently, again, money came down to an issue, though. But in an ideal world, yes, I would love to see high school kids go to school later in the day. They don't adjust their sleep schedules just because school's coming around. My own children, I know, when they were in high school, they would stay up late at night doing their homework, and then they'd have to get up real early in the morning, and it's an issue. Yes, it is. And Des Moines has done it. Some of the other school districts have flip-flopped them, and it's been relatively successful, but I would like to see it, sure.
Thank you. Mr. Sainci?
Yeah, Tom Barton is screaming in my ear right now, and I'm reminded, process. You need good process. A decision like that would not be made without good process, input from citizens, our teachers, because any decision we make, it impacts their ability to also be a parent or a living citizen here in Dubuque. And so we need good process. We need to make sure we have all the data readily available to make that informed decision. And so I just encourage all of us, process, process, process. Do not forget who owns the joint, the citizens. And so let's make sure their input is engaged and we're asking all the right questions with our teachers because, again, they play a huge role. And right now, what we cannot afford is to lose good quality teachers. We need to do everything in our power to retain first good quality teachers.
Thank you. Ms. Sanger.
First, this is kind of a fun question. I think it's important to look at, are there issues because of the current start time? And what are those issues? And is there ways that we can address them first before we move a schedule for many parents and for many students as well? So it does go back to that process into the data and really looking at that and diving into it. And again, asking parents what's working, what's not working, students what's working, what's not working, teachers and staff as well, and having a clear understanding of scope of what that looks like. I don't think this is a conversation that has been brought up recently as far as my knowledge on the school board. So there's a lot of information that you have to gather in order to make that decision. This brought me back a lot to when I was in high school. I don't necessarily remember any issues, but I do remember those kids that would put their heads down on the table too. So I do think it's something that we can talk about, but we need to find out what that looks like first and really reaching out and doing that outreach.
Thank you. Ms. Williams-Robinson.
Yes, I agree with what everyone said. We do need to speak with teachers and educators and see where their standpoint is on this issue. Also parents and as well, because working parents, that can be a problem for them. I do have a high school student and he went to senior and he started school at, I think it was 7:30 at senior. And now he goes to ALC and he starts school at 8 and it was hard for him to get up at 7:30 and it's hard for him to get up at 8. So I think that even adjusting the times, we have to figure out like what are these kids doing, what are their habits, why are they up late, can they actually adjust to the real world, because when you go to work, you got to be at work at 7:30, and they're not going to adjust the time for you because you didn't get enough rest yesterday. So I think we need to look at it all as a whole and decide, is it that going to be something that will necessarily help or not help out in our kids and their education?
Thank you. Ms. Bradley.
Well, the research is compelling on this. It says the teenage biological internal time clock would have us start school later than we are doing. I participated in a district and community study about 15 years ago on this topic. It was just conclusive. You cannot argue with the data on it. So we pursued an implementation plan. What we bumped into was three things really, two sort of. One is that if we were to flip-flop the buses to say, let's have elementary students start early, secondary students start late, then we have little kids waiting for buses in the dark in the winter because it's dark at the time they would need to be waiting for the buses. Secondly, we heard mightily from some of our athletic groups and coaches saying, don't make me have practice instead of after school, don't make me have it before school in the morning. So there was quite an outcry at that time. Perhaps that would not be the case now. I can't speak to that. Mr. Prochaska said it right. If we were to look at K-12 buses, as Western Dubuque does and others in the state do quite successfully, that seems a perfect solution, but for the cost. The cost of the more buses, the cost of the more bus drivers, it seems to be pretty prohibitive for us. And so we bump up against that. We must not stop talking about this. We must not consider it a done thing until we find a way to make it happen. Mr. Reingans even talked about sliding even 20 minutes different. I know, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Ms. Jones.
We're working on it.
I would agree that sleep is extremely important. All the evidence is there, especially for our teenagers, and the importance that it plays in our health and our just body regenerating itself. And when you're doing all that growing, I I was a kid who liked to sleep in as well, so I completely understand. I am definitely open to that idea of flip-flopping. It sounds like it has been looked into. There's a lot of obstacles there, but getting input from definitely teachers, parents. I do see how there could be complications or more daycare costs in the afternoon, which could add up for families. That could be a big obstacle too. But definitely open to looking into it, or how can we close that gap of time.
Thank you very much. Well, now it's time for closing remarks, and we're going to start now with you, Ms. Williams-Robinson. 2 minutes for each person to wrap up. Thank you.
Thank you. I do want to thank you guys for having me here today again. Do I know all the answers? No, I do not. I am a learner as I go, but I do know that I am compassionate about the best interests of our students, our teachers, and our parents as well. I believe that if I am on the school board, if I'm selected, I would be a great connection between families and teachers, because I have a deep connection within the community and I have an understanding of what families that are in need do need, and I will be able to help provide that for them. I believe that I will make informed decisions, and I would definitely gather more information before I just go ahead and say, hey, I'm going. And I'm also a person who is a compromiser. I like to create understanding. I like to understand where others are coming from so that we can come to a common ground to do what's right for our students first, our teachers, and then the parents of the students. So again, if you select me, I will serve my best to my ability for this community.
Thank you. Ms. Sanger.
Oh, we're going this way.
Oh, new way. I'll take it.
Your ball.
I would like to first, again, thank you for allowing all the candidates to come today and speak before you. I listened to all of your voices and appreciate your perspectives. I think everybody brings different gifts and talents, and I value that a lot. I just want you to leave you with the knowledge that when I set my heart and my mind to something, I'm all in. I have gone through this process with an open heart and an open mind, and done my best to educate myself in district rules, policies, procedures, meeting with countless district members, including the secondary education, elementary education, finance department, student services, HR, and just really getting to know each of those services that our district relates to. In addition to that, just getting to know what teachers need, what parents need, and what students need as well. So I'm not only that individual that has that passion, but I'm one that definitely does everything I can to achieve that passion. I feel like a lot of this work I'm already doing within the district in the best way that I know how. So a lot of that is through food and through our nonprofit Project Rooted, and ensuring that every kid has access to healthy local foods in our community. Beyond that, we are already addressing brain health, and I've been working collaboratively with Brain Health now and ensuring that we get those brain health retreat rooms up and going, and that Project Rooted can have a space in there, again, to connect kids to healthy local foods and address those brain health issues. I try to do my best to listen, again, to teachers, to students, to really hear what their needs are, and adapt and pivot in regards to those needs as well. I think it's important for us to be constant learners. I don't know everything either. I'm learning as I go, but if elected, I will do everything in my power to move mountains, work collaboratively, create impact, and do it with an open mind and an open heart. So I would love to have your vote on November 2nd. Vote Whitney Sanger. I'm here for the people and for these kids.
Thank you. Mr. Sainci?
Well, I too want to echo what they just said. Thank you for putting this together. I want to thank the viewers. And I just want to remind the viewers and everyone who's watching, number one, Anderson Sainci was the first African-American male ever elected to the Dubuque Community School Board. And I'm the only black or brown local official in this community, so I don't take that lightly. You believed in me 4 years, and I hope you will believe in me 4 more years. I've been in every single building. This is no disrespect to anyone in here. No one on this board or committee will put more time and efforts to reach to all of our students and teachers. And again, it's in the work that I do. I've worked with many community partners to address public health issues, equity, poverty, brain health, hunger. You can look at the Back to School Bash. You can look at Road to Success for Teens. You can look at our efforts to make sure kids are not only exposed to a 2-year, but a 4-year, working to make sure kids are exposed to trades. And so it's in my DNA. As the young kid said, I'm just built different, right? I also want to thank my beautiful wife. All of you know her as my boss, right? 4 years ago, we made this commitment together. It does take a community, it does take a family, and every single night when I'm reading emails or I'm processing what people are saying to me, she has been my rock, she has been the shoulder I can lean on, she has been the person that I can ask questions. Although we have different opinions at times, she makes sure that I never forget, do what's best for students. Let your heart guide you. So I want to publicly thank her, my boss, for just being there for me. And then again, I want to thank all the viewers on November 2nd for re-electing me. And again, you will have a leader who will continue to advocate not only on a local level, but a state level, and to do what's best, not only for our students, but also for our teachers. Right now, workforce is one of the biggest issues we need to focus on with the community. And I want the teachers, parents, and students to know I will have your back for the next 4 years again.
Thank you. Mr. Prochaska.
Yeah, this past year and a half has been a challenge for everybody, employees, teachers, administrators. I feel our district has managed it well. As a board member, we've been part of that plan, the Return to Learn plan. And if reelected, I'll continue to advocate for these initiatives that I've been involved in the last few years, ensuring equity and diversity for all of our students and buildings as much as possible, further to encourage streamlining of our district facilities, to ensure cost efficiency, to see the completion of Phase 2 at senior high school, to continue to make decisions that advocate for the physical and the brain health of our young people. Our young people are very important. They are our future. Also, I want us to continue to advocate again for student achievement. That should be our #1 priority. And I support the Return to Learn plan for the district as well as the strategic plan. And we've been maintaining fiscal responsibility throughout my 8 years on the board. And we have not raised anybody's property taxes per se. The levy rate has gone down. Our buildings that have all basically been additions or renovations have been through the 1% sales tax. So it didn't affect taxpayers significantly. In conclusion, I have always been proud to be a board member, proud to have been a Dubuque Community School District employee, and proud that all my 3 children, or our 3 children, attended the Dubuque schools. So thanks for your support, and make sure that you vote on November 2nd. And good luck to the rest of our candidates.
Thank you. Ms. Mueller.
I want to thank the League of Women Voters once again for having us tonight so we can express our views. My goals in running for the school board include supporting some of the new education initiatives like the Core Plus teachers that give additional instruction to help students who may have missed learning last year, and the educational pathways at the high school level that are helping our students transition into our local workforce by taking classes that offer concurrent credits for both high school and college, and by other pathways that allow students to do job shadowing or apprenticeships or internships, which can lead to a Learn to Earn program. I want to listen to parents and teachers and taxpayers when it comes to what we do about our aging buildings, but I do think we need to have a plan to renovate or replace those buildings and to get air conditioning in all of those buildings, and at the end, to have equitable facilities in all areas of our district. So we have neighborhood schools in our schools. I want to be a good steward of our taxpayer dollars, and I do not want to see property taxes raised in our community. We already have 46% of our property taxes go to the school district, so I think that should be a sufficient amount. It would be an honor to serve on the Dubuque School Board and to give back to the community that has given so much to me. Please vote for Cindy Mueller on November 2nd so that I can work for you to achieve these goals.
Thank you. Ms. Jones?
Yes, again, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight and with all of you. As a parent in the district, I'm deeply invested in the success of our schools and dedicated to maintaining excellence in our district. I will be a strong advocate for our children. With my experience as a nurse, my experience on the Board of Health and my continuing education myself in health and life coaching. I believe all these roles have given me very unique experiences and insights into the public health that and the barriers that we have within our communities. They've all been really highlighted over this past year and a half. I'm not just talking about COVID, I'm talking about brain health, I'm talking about food insecurities, shelter, feeling safe in a home environment. All these things that our children are bringing to school with them every day. With the knowledge I have, I can be the bridge between these gaps in our district and our public health system. I also see many similarities between my profession and the profession of teachers and their staff. We're both constantly caring for and giving to others, working with people of all backgrounds and all different needs. We oftentimes are dealing with short staffing and asked to produce the same outcomes. And we've both been on the front lines for the last 18 months, and it's been hard. And I want to work hard as a school board member and fight for those teachers. I want to make sure that all the staff, the school nurses, the bus drivers, that they're working in a fair and safe environment, that they're getting the pay they deserve. As a product of public education, I'm a firm believer that it's the best system that we have. And I want to work hard and vote for Katie Jones on November 2nd.
Thank you. Ms. Bradley?
Well, my devotion to kids in this community has really been my entire adult life. Having spent my career in Dubuque schools, teacher, elementary principal, working with professional learning for our adult leaders, and serving as the director of elementary education. Then 4 years on the Board of Education, serving as a board member on the Keystone Area Education Area Board. I think I'm pretty uniquely qualified to bring expertise and understanding and insights and perspectives that are very valuable to the board. I think it really comes down to excellence in education. What do our kids need? What do they deserve? They deserve the finest educational system that we can possibly provide for them. And it is our responsibility to provide that. And so for me, that's my commitment, is that we will provide that highest quality education for all of the children in the Dubuque Community School District. My focus has been and will continue to be on excellence in teaching and excellence in leadership, strong student learning outcomes, extensive student programming options, which we're adding more and more to, fiscal responsibility, continued fiscal efficiencies, continuous improvement, and I'm a big believer in growth mindset as a key factor in institutional success and individual success. So as a continuing member of the school board, if I'm reelected to do such, I'll be prepared and helpful to the continuing issues of the board. We haven't talked about many of the issues, though your questions have been excellent. But there are so many issues that we've been wrestling with and working on. They need to continue. And things that will come up in the future will be based in part or in whole on some of those continuing issues. I believe that my background, my experience in many different roles in the district, the deep knowledge that I have, demonstrated devotion to public education and its students, and my eagerness to continue my service as a member of the Board of Education are deserving of support. I hope that I will earn your support and your vote. And I want to thank, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this event. You provide for the community an incredible way to be further informed and to help our citizens be wise voters when it comes to November 2nd.
Thank you, Ms. Bradley.
My pleasure, thank you.
The Dubuque League certainly thanks all of you for participating, your thoughtful answers. I think it'll really help the voters make up their mind. This forum can be seen again on the district website, www.dbqschools.org. Thanks to the community school staff for broadcasting this forum and for arranging a special website to receive the questions from the community. And we would certainly like to thank the voters for watching and submitting the questions. Remember to vote November 2nd, where you will be voting for the Dubuque City Council and Mayor, the Dubuque Community School Board, and the Land and Water Bond issue. Thank you very much.